Hello, and welcome back to Leave 'Em Alone, the show where we hear your problems and we get you to leave 'em alone. That's right. After last week's unfortunate incident, we here at Leave 'Em Alone, as well as the good people at Lawsuit Handling Incorporated, want to remind you that leaving your problems alone is great, but vital heart medication is not an issue. So don't stop taking your heart medication. Moving on, our next guest has been struggling with this problem for quite a while now, and they'd like to remain anonymous, but yeah, is this some internal struggle, some external force? The former, yes, I've been struggling with this for a few decades now, and no matter how hard that I try, and God knows that I've tried, I can't make out what the Cocteau Twins are saying. Cocteau, Crocketou. Have you ever tried looking up the lyrics on Genius? Another success. Leave 'Em Alone will be right back after these messages. I really thought... Wait a second. Let me bring you over. I really thought you'd be able to see these a lot better, but they look tiny. Anyway, I digress. Hello and welcome, I'm Liam the Music Reviewer, and welcome to another episode of Worst to Best, where worst means weakest and best means... It means best. Scotland is known for a fair few things, whether that's train spotting, iron brew, kilts, or inept music reviewers. Why is it B-roll of me? And in amongst that list somewhere you would probably have the Scottish weather.
Oh my god! Trampoline! Oh my god!
And if any band managed to capture the Scottish weather, it would be homegrown act Cocteau Twins. For most of their career, the band consisted of Robin Guthrie, Simon Raymond, and Liz Fraser.
That's me.
From 1979 up until their breakup in 1997, the Cocteau Twins would use their 9-record-long discography to really capture the Scottish climate, from the common grey cloud dreariness to the atypical sunny dreaminess and everything in between, pioneering a genre or two along the way. They're one of music's most legendary rock and pop outfits and one of my personal favourite bands. I really can't wait to dive into their catalogue of music, so I'll waste no more time. Let's rank every Cocteau Twins album from worst to best, starting with... Putting this release here may be a little controversial in certain circles, but not because it's at the bottom, more so because I've decided to include it at all. The Moon The Melodies isn't usually seen as a Cocteau Twins project, usually because it's not labelled as such. Liz, Robin and Simon all credited individually alongside Brian Eno collaborator Harold Budd, but my list, my rules. If you've got any complaints, you can send them to the address on screen just now. Don't get me wrong, there are lovely moments of the trio being present and dreamy, but the Moon The Melodies concerns itself more with ambient, minimal compositions. Granted, these ambient cuts can sometimes be rewarding, such as The Ghost Has No Home, very deconstructed, badalamenti stuff, but more often than not, they're like memory gongs that struck me as a bit weary. Not helping is the fact that it clocks in at just over 7 minutes long, which is nearly a fifth of the record's runtime, and it isn't the only culprit of going on a bit too long. The peak of this record comes with tracks like the opener, where Liz is aptly swallowed whole by a cacophonous basking shark. There's also She Will Destroy You, a hypnotic walk through the woods with a satisfying saxophone climax. Prime Cocteau Twins, so it is. I would say that I enjoy the Moon The Melodies. Even the low moments like Memory Gongs aren't wholly without merit. I just feel it's a bit of an unbalanced collaboration, especially with the Cocteau tools that Harold Budd had at his disposal. Still worth checking out, even if just for completionist purposes.
How do you feel about the whole project at the moment? You feel good? You feel up about it?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah?
I think we're writing better music than it's the best music we've ever done. I think it just gets better and better.
In hindsight, this interview snippet takes on a bit of a bittersweet form. The band split 2 years later, ultimately derailing Liz's enthusiasm, and with the internal turmoil that was going on that would cause this breakup in the first place, did this tension end up ruining their last full-length project, Milk and Kisses, becoming a bit of a bum note to their legacy? Funnily enough, no. Robin would call the making of Milk and Kisses a joyous experience, with Simon reflected on how naturally everything fell into place. I don't think Milk and Kisses rocks the boat too much, but there are more than enough moments for me to find it redeeming and a worthwhile addition to their catalogue. Appearing on an acoustic EP released the year before, Half Gift is a beautiful song whose confrontational approach lyrically wouldn't have been out of place on the band's last record, Four Calendar Cafe. How Liz tries to calm herself over this fading melody takes on a chilling yet beautiful meaning to it all. Then there's a deeply personal World Cane Heart, dedicated to Jeff Buckley, which builds up to a satisfying climax with a coloratura interlude, which, from my pronunciation, you can tell I only found out the meaning of fairly recently. In Liam's terms, it's an elaborate melody with a lot of vocal flares and such, the density of which makes the song feel all the more impressive and really helps to accentuate how personal and special it all is to Liz. Music theory lesson over, this is the band's longest record, coming in at around 42 minutes long. Would it be right to say it drags on? As I said before, the band doesn't undergo a lot of experimentation, making it a bit less exciting than what came before. On the other hand, nothing about it is explicitly excruciating, so while the length works against it, I don't think it results in it being a poor or even a subpar album. That lack of experimentation is something the trio commented on, that they were always expected to be doing great unprecedented things all the time, while other bands got a bit more leeway. Bearing this in mind, Milk and Kisses is a bit of a rebuttal to those expectations, showing that the Cocteau Twins would make whatever record they felt like, regardless of how groundbreaking it was. A comfort album born very naturally. Fans at the time wouldn't realise that this would be their last taste of the Cocteau Twins, but thankfully it's a pretty nice record to go out on. It may not be their strongest effort, but for all intents and purposes, Four Calendar Cafe is the most important Cocteau Twins album, from Liz's more direct lyrics to the more pop-orientated sound palette to the inner turmoil that was going on that would ultimately lead up to that breakup that we're talking about in the last entry. You really cannot bring up the Cocteau career without mentioning Four Calendar Cafe. It might sound a bit daft saying that Liz singing more coherently is a brave, exciting change, but considering how a lot of the dreaminess the band had provided thus far came from how her voice often served as a further layer in the composition, it's absolutely a shake-up. The lyrical portion of this album acts as a rebuttal to anyone who thinks that Liz was some one-trick pony, though even if this record didn't exist, such a statement would be incredibly daft. Take Theft and Wandering Around Lost, which revolves around some pretty heavy topics, Liz reclaiming the power that was taken away from her. It's an incredibly fragile track, one that threatens to fall apart in your hands at any given moment, along with Liz's enchanting and delicate singing, overall contrasting with her strength to retell this hardship. My Truth exists in the same realm, though feels as if it was recorded in a deep cave. The metronome included sound like some solitary droplets of rainwater that have made their way into this cavern. The imagery this song conjures makes it feel all the more fulfilling to me, as Liz talks of choosing between ruminating in this darkness or rising from it, tougher than ever. It's not a total melancholic affair though, because while Four Calendar Cafe focuses on finding the strength within yourself to fight off forces that want to define you, there are moments where the band's sound is uplifting as they ever have. If you've listened to this album before, then I'm sure your mind jumped right away to Squeeze Wax, which had a jovial lick that reminds me of The Cure's more chart-friendly hits. The Scuzzy Summerhead aims for a similar mood and succeeds. The guitar sounding so drenched and liquefied that you'd imagine Robin and Simon had left theirs out in scorching hot heat that Scotland is definitely renowned for. When followed by Closer Purr, Four Calendar Cafe undoubtedly pulls off a triumphant conclusion to an underrated album that showed fans both then and now that the band hadn't used up all their talent this late into their career. If I had a nickel for every time the Cocteau Twins would become a duo, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't that much, but it's pretty weird that that happened twice, don't you think? Following the Tiny Dynamite EP, Home to Ribbed and Veined, which would be in a James Bond soundtrack in an alternate timeline, the Cocteau Twins would go through another shake-up, becoming a duo for the second time in their career. With Simon being absent due to collaborating with the Mortal Coil in their record Filigree and Shadow, Liz and Robin were left to their own devices for LP4. Something you need to remember is that 1986 was a year of great experimentation for the band, with both this as well as Moon The Melodies showing how unpredictable their trajectory would be. Victorialand may not be their first or best foray into dream pop, but in terms of capturing the euphoria and fuzziness of a deep sleep, this right here is their dreamiest release. It's a pretty common assessment that what Liz and Robin crafted here borders more on the ambient side of things than ethereal wave. Take Opener Lazy Cam for instance. Robin's experimentation with the Cocteau Twins palette is apparent from the get-go, an absence of percussion in favour of utilising acoustic guitars so drenched in reverb that I need a towel nearby to dry myself off. Both feet like fins and the thinner the air also benefit greatly from this beautiful approach, the latter feeling like it should be performed at the Roadhouse, though with how frosty it sounds it would probably be during the winter. Speaking of which, considering its name, it's difficult not to describe Victorialand as having an icy exterior, to the point where on a song like Whale's Tales, you can make out the misty clouds Liz exhales as she chants. Then there's Little Spacey, which actually sounds a little bit dopey, but oozing with the kind of romance that you'd expect from a solely Liz and Robin affair, the former's fluttery singing acting as a burst of sunlight that would melt the coldest of hearts. Victorialand undoubtedly stands out as an outlier in the Cocteau Twins catalogue. Nothing before or after sounded quite like what Robin and Liz accomplished on here, but I think that only goes to make me enjoy and appreciate it all the more. After their second stint as a duo, Simon returned to the band to put together Bluebell Knoll that, once again, shook up the band and shook up the expectations that both fans and critics had for the Cocteau Twins. From what I've read, this seems to be the album that the band has the fondest memories making, and I think that probably comes down to the fact they had more control than ever, to the extent that they built a studio from the ground up and even turned down the chance of Brian Eno producing one of their records, which is a mind-blowing prospect when you think about it. It could also come down to the fact that, in Simon's own words, the drug issues and relationship issues hadn't kicked into such a destructive level at that point. Regardless, Bluebell Knoll gives off a sky's the limit radiance to me, and part of that comes down to the percussion. Completely absent from their prior record Victorialand, it makes a very welcome return. Something like Spoon and Good Singing Gum benefits greatly from the appearance of marimba and glockenspiel, which represents Bluebell Knoll's commitment to a more sonically dense approach of music making compared to the band's more ambient acoustic affair last time around. The band's change of pace is further shown with Liz's performances. They're far more grandiose and acrobatic, which only goes to cement Bluebell Knoll as a return to the ethereal nature of Treasure. You only have to listen to a few seconds of Afro Bros to be taken aback by how her cryptic singing continued to be utterly mesmerising. It's a dream pop trifle, with each vocal layer given the time and care that most songs in their entirety are lucky to receive. The combination of both of these elements comes in the form of Garlands' Fingers, one of the greatest songs the band has ever conceived. It's an ascension. It's as if Liz has been reunited with a love who has long since passed, working with her upper register to add to the sensation of levitating. One of the most stunning songs I've ever heard. Listening to this album over 3 decades later, I can't deny Bluebell Knoll's timelessness. While I think their entire catalogue of music has been influential to some degree, it's with this album where I can feel bands like Sigur Ró or even entire movements such as shoegaze trying to capture this same spark. For whatever reason, Bluebell Knoll seems to get a bit of a middling rep, at least compared to the conventional Cocteau top choices. While in retrospect, people like myself are far more positive on it, you don't have to tread far to find people calling it things along the lines of unnoteworthy. An infamous critic of this album was Robert Christgau, who, in his review of Bluebell Knoll, said, "Have you ever heard the one about being so open-minded that when you lay down to sleep your brains fall out?" I may be 32 years late in replying, but when said open-mindedness results in songs that propel me to the extent that I'm verging on breaking through the stratosphere, I'm pretty happy with some brain gloop all over my pillowcase. It's not often that an act can get it so right on their first attempt, but lo and behold, that's what the Cocteau Twins did with their debut record, Garlands. The only album of theirs with original bassist Will Helge, the thick, impenetrable mood of this record is so irresistible in a way that the band's music typically isn't. At this point, how unique Liz Fraser's voice is and how imperative it is to Cocteau magic is pretty blatant. Considering this was a band in their infancy, Garlands has all their quirks and oddities on show in the vocal department. More often than not, it's as if someone is whispering jokes into Liz's ear, her singing taking on a giggling quality which is just charming in its own right. When you take this into account with the atmosphere that is crafted by Robin and Will, that irresistibility takes on a more foreboding tone than usual. There's no time wasted as opener Blood Bitch kicks off with these rusty guitar spectres that I just adore. Considering how effect laden it is, it holds up incredibly well, perhaps too much considering how Liz sings of a corona swelling. Her singing here has that aforementioned giggling edge that comes off as fear-ridden, which only goes to enhance the eerie post-punk nature of this album. That timidness is something that Cocteau Twins utilised rather well on this album. Following track Wax and Wane has a tepid drum machine that you could see as being a shortcoming, but it's the furthest thing from it. To me, it resembles a car stalling and breaking down in the middle of nowhere, Robin and Will making this forest of noise. All the while, Liz is prancing around, singing about the devil biting dirty, sounding possessed in the process. I couldn't bring up Garlands without mentioning the incredible opening run that we witness, But I'm Not continues the momentum built up from Blood Bitch and Wax and Wane, offering the most gothic lyrics on display. Liz takes on the role of a woodland spirit, forced to haunt this domain without being offered the mercy of death that all the other creatures brought here have. Blind Dumb Death has this pleasant bass guitar slowly rise from this body of reverb like some swamp monster, all the algae and foliage wrapped around it. When paired with Liz's off-kilter singing, the song takes on a siren-like quality to it. I just can't resist this abnormal but no less beautiful call to my demise. I could entertain the argument that the band are lightly teetering on the repetitive side of things, but at 35 minutes long, I think the Cocteau Twins show a fair amount of restraint as well as versatility that keeps us on our toes. It absolutely wears its birthday party influences on its sleeves, and the band would end up outdoing this sound on the very next record they would put out. But I still find this to be an incredible album that really does help to make 1982 goth rock's most important and just all around impressive year, what with Kissing the Dream House by Sushi and the Banshees, Pornography by The Cure, and Garland's help. That just creates this not so holy trinity. This is the type of album that I would love to listen to when camping or if I was exploring an abandoned warehouse. Now you remember that I said that Garlands got outdone at its specific sound on the very next record, and this is it. Head Over Heels, their sophomore record, and the first time that the Cocteau Twins were a duo following the unexplained departure of Will Helge, and you would maybe assume that things would get a little bit less ambitious or a bit shakier following this departure, but you couldn't be more wrong. For starters, Liz's voice only becomes more remarkable as the seamless nature of her singing glimpse on Garlands only becomes more apparent. On top of that, Robin wasn't hesitant about pushing the capabilities of what the band could conjure from a production standpoint, bringing in an arsenal of keyboards, guitars and a drumulator to transform the foggy eeriness of their debut album into something more tangible but no less mysterious. Take for instance 51050 Fold, one of my favourite tracks on the record, which partially comes down to that wondrous saxophone that floats above the thick, foreboding atmosphere like a boy. It also comes down to Liz's wraithy voice that knows no rest as it sneezes and wheezes its way in this hazy soundscape. Existing in this same realm is Glass Candle Grenades, which makes me feel as if the band and I have gotten ourselves into some Ed, Edd and Eddy antic as we fly down the hill in a barrel. Everything we speed past adds this big mesh of sound. Continuing on with the cartoon comparisons, the Tinderbox of a Heart is a kind of ominous track that instills you with this kind of dread you'd only ever get with Courage the Cowardly Dog's more surreal moments. These two songs alone go to show the extent to which Robin really fleshed out what the band were capable of, but unlike Garlands, which really only focused on one vision, albeit very well, we get the saplings that would eventually grow into the dream pop legacy the band is renowned for. Sugar Hiccup would nestle right in on a record like Bluebell Knoll, the guitars on here going through some sort of mitosis as they take on a multitude of dreamy roles. The comfort that Liz's voice radiates on here is akin to a knitted blanket or homemade soup. I just can't play down the warmth and love that infects me when this track plays. We've talked a little bit about the brevity of Cocteau Twins albums, with most going on just over half an hour, and much in the same way Garland's gothic ways benefited from this concentration, Head Over Heels also feels perfectly proportioned. At no point do things feel like they're going on longer than needed. or that certain ideas aren't being fleshed out enough. Garlands, as much as I love it, could sometimes feel as if it were being saved from wearing itself a little thin. Head Over Heels, on the other hand, never wastes a second, and sounds to me like it's using every opportunity to make me care. The band would work Head Over Heels sound into future projects, but this was the last album that's DNA mainly consisted of goth rock, and as a farewell to that era, this is the kind of last hurrah that you could only dream of, or well, maybe have nightmares of is a bit more appropriate. And here we have it, the band's most well-known record, their most accessible work, and as you would expect, their most popular album as a result. And it's all rather ironic considering the fact that so much was going on in the background, most notably Robin's progressively damaging drug addiction, which put a further strain on his and Liz's relationship following the birth of their baby Lucy. Taking into account the passing of Simon's father in the middle of recording this album, you wouldn't be wrong in saying the pieces were in place for the band to be demotivated, derailed, destined to have their career cruelly cut short. With the power of hindsight, we know that isn't the case, and in 1990, on Lucy's first birthday, Heaven or Las Vegas was welcomed into the world. I would pinpoint this as the moment that the band's trademark ethereal sound and the genre of dream pop as a whole was perfected. It's honestly quite daunting trying to figure out which song I should shower in praise first, but a personal favourite of mine is 50/50 Clown. The opening feels like I'm ascending a building inside one of those see-through elevators in a cyberpunk setting, all the neon lights of the city blurring into one big, beautiful slush puppy of colour. The way in which the band uses this vibrant instrumentation and the album in general to mask over hardship very much alludes to the core concept of the record, which is trying to hone in on the beauty of life. You only have to listen to Picture the Baby for a display of this very ethos. Liz's lyrics here still lack a lot of clarity, still being largely indecipherable, though the coon in which she delivers them via is still totally enchanting. The ones that come through, however, such as the refrain of I Only Want to Love You and the desire to fill hearts with sugar, stand out from the feverish closing in guitars. I love the industrial whirring that's rhythmically pricked by that bass line. I hear that as this overlooking dread or fear that the band are trying to distract or fight off with their tranquil musings. Enough overanalyzing, I can't bring up Heaven or Las Vegas without talking about that glorious shoegazy title track. The kind of song that feels like a lucid dream in which you're able to accomplish your each and every desire. I'm a big lyrics guy, and while I think the ones on this track carry value, just Liz's voice as an additional wand to the magic being created here makes it one of the best tracks I've ever heard. Pop in the 80s and 90s was often uniform in its high fidelity and gleam, bubble wrapped and perfectly packaged. The dream pop that Cocteau Twins headlined and perfected on here was the perfect juxtaposition. The homemade alternative that boasted charming idiosyncrasies and blissful arrangements so airy that they'd vanish with the tiniest gust of wind. It was, and still is, a rare treasure worth being cherished, but if we're going to talk about rare treasures worth being cherished, we really can't avoid talking about the number one pick on this list, which, of course, is... After their sophomore album, Cocteau Twins started to experiment with Ethereal Wave on the Spangle Maker, an EP home to not only the first appearance of Simon Raymond, but also Pearly Dewdrops Drops, their highest charting single. I do also want to use some of my allotted time to praise the eponymous goth rock track, one of the band's best. This all led up to Treasure, the band's magnum opus. Liz Fraser is often described as being the voice of God, and with this album here, I feel like that claim holds the most water. I have absolutely no clue what she's singing on the opening track, Ivo, despite closely reading the lyrics, yet I just don't care at all. Her little terrier yelps of people and peach blows sounds like utter ear candy as they traverse around this cathedral environment. Then you've got Lorelei, a standout example of the band's capability to evoke so much by seemingly saying so little. Liz's rushed rapid gasps, upper register chiming, and echoey drones create a sheet of music that on its own would be enough to sell you in the band. When layered on top of Robin and Simon's lush instrumental creations, it's an absolute slice of heaven. If there was such a religion that had tracks like Ivo, Donimo and Lorelei played at masses, I'd empty every penny I have into the collection plate. Being the voice of God implies the existence of a horny guy downstairs, and I'm not talking about your neighbour. And with the track Persephone, his existence is acknowledged. It opens up with these crunchy drum kicks that are reminiscent of Bowser's footsteps when he's swaggering up to you in Super Mario 64. With the sprawling confrontational guitars latching and closing in on you like some thorny, sentient forest beast, while Liz belts out Hey like a banshee. It's just one of the band's most wondrous tracks. You'll remember I said Heaven or Las Vegas is where Cocteau Twins perfected their dream pop formula, and I still stand by that. Like with the example of Persephone, Treasure's a bit more multifaceted with the ethereal wave palette it paints with, to ever really be defined by one label. That being said, when dream pop is on the menu, I would still go as far as calling it pretty flawless, such as Pandora for Cindy. Those opening guitars and Liz's La La La's put me into a haze that is near impossible to break out of. It's a song that exists in a world where I would build a house with my own two hands in order to live out my remaining days there. It's got good things on it, but it's certainly not got that timeless quality said Robin Guthrie about Treasure, which is pretty laughable considering just how long-standing the love for this album has been. When Robert Smith of The Cure describes your album as being one of the most romantic records ever recorded, and would also get ready for his own wedding listening to it, you've done a great job. And when Free Time Egg and Spoon Race winner Liam the Music Reviewer says this is your best album, you've done a great job. And there we have it, every Cocteau Twins album ranked from worst to best. That was fun, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys have ranked, so leave them down in the comments below along with your favourite songs. I've made a Spotify playlist with all of my picks, so you can go follow that if you want. What else am I meant to say? I've got similar videos to this, like a discography ranking of The Cure and one of Radiohead and one of Death Grips and loads more, so subscribe. Go watch them as well if you want to, and if you're feeling rather generous, you can go support me on Patreon for £1 a month. You'll get early access to my videos, which you may already be doing. Maybe you got to this one a day in advance like I always do with my videos if you're supporting me. I always try and voice my own thoughts with my content, but I came across this quote when I was researching for this video, and I think it just puts everything in a neat wee bow, so it does. And it's by Steve Sutherland, who for Melody Maker said this of Treasure, and that it's, most people change, Cocteau Twins blossom. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe, stay hydrated.